Hi everyone, and welcome to my latest tutorial on how to make, paint and weather a fence post. These are the two examples that I'll be showing you how to make during this video, and we'll look at different build and painting techniques. First of all, you need to get your reference material together. It's vitally important that you get some inspiration. Plenty of photos there on the web that will be able to help you out. And what we now need to do is to get some materials together. First of all, if we start with the larger of the fence post, here I've used a 5mm styrene square rod. For the other fence post, I'm going to be using 3mm styrene rod. And around the styrene rod, I'm going to wrap some milliput. And I'll show you some ways of doing some sculpting work to create some effective wood grain and some wood knots. With the square fence post, we'll be using a combo drill to create the gnarled look. And here's one that I did earlier, and it will be showing you how to create that particular look as well. And then what we'll do, we'll be using acrylics to lay down some base coats, and then we'll add some textures and some more highlights using oils along with some artistic thinners. And then we'll have a look at how to make some barbed wire using 3mm copper wire, and also we'll be putting some roots around the fence post using 2mm wire. And then that will enable us then to add on ammos, paper, ivy. And then finally we'll have a look at putting on some pigments to give some earth effects and tones as well. So first of all, let's grab the 3mm styrene rod, and we're going to add on the milliput. We don't want it to be ultra thin, we'd like it to be fairly thick because obviously we want to get some deep wood grain in there. So you just need a pinch of each one, taken off of each of the sausage-like tubes here. And then what you must do is really give it a good mix through, so that it all blends in well together. As you can see now, I've put my gloves on because it's quite a messy process. And we'll put some talcum powder down. Just find yourself something like a CD. I mean, I'm using a mirror here. And then what you need to do to stop it all from sticking is to get the talc on there, and also on some sort of roller that you can use, and that will enable you to spread it out and, like I say, get it to a thickness that you're happy with. So once that's done, what you need to do is to get yourself a knife and cut it to the length that you require. So it's a nice square rectangle. Use a metal ruler as well. And with the strip, there we go, that's the sort of thickness that I was after, which I was happy with. And then it's a matter of wrapping it around the styrene rod, and then just simply get some water and rub it along to get rid of the join. And as you can see, we're starting to get some effective wood grain there. Now for the top of the post I should say, we're going to need to just make a little round section. So I've just used an old scrap of PE, bent it around the styrene rod, and just like making scones out of pastry, I've just made a small disc. And then again, that was added onto the top of the fence post, and using water again, that was all blended in nicely. And there we go, all coming along very well. Add a little bit of texture, get an old flannel or an old cotton towel as I'm using here, and just press it in very gently because you don't want to lose the form, and that will just add a little bit of texture on there as well, as you can see. Next, we want to try and create a wood grain effect on the very top of the fence post. So this is plastic paper. Just roll it up as tight as you possibly can to get as many circles, and then just get a piece of Tamiya tape, strap it all together so it's nice and tight, and then you can just get the end of the fence post and press that in, and that will create a very nice wood grain effect. Now, before it dries, we need to do some sculpting. These are different sculpting knives that I use. Whatever you do decide to do, make sure that you get a brand new blade, because you want it to be as sharp as possible, and obviously be very careful when using the sharp blades. And just do different types of wood effect, and also use some of the spare leftover milliput to make little knots on the wood as well. And there we go. This will be left to harden overnight, so over a 24-hour period. Next, I will go over to the other fence post, and as explained before, we need to create this particular gnarled look, and I'll be using my combo drill, which has adjustable speeds, and we will look at using the burnisher and this tip, which is quite a fierce one, and that really does dig out the grain. So first of all, take off the edges and sort of really sand down the sharpness, so to give more of a gnarled and smooth looking post. And also you can create good wood grain effects by running it down the middle of the rod as well. And then getting out the other one there, this is where you can achieve the darker, deeper, more gnarled effect on the fence post. And then when you're happy, just get a sanding stick, a coarse one, and just get rid of most of the looseness there. Right, next we're going to make a piece of barbed wire. I was inspired by Sully, who does a fantastic video on how to make barbed wire, a lot better than what I've done it. And I've put the link in my description, so nip over to his site and you can see how to make the barbed wire. I used 3mm wire and just wrapped it around the fence post as per the photos that I was using for my inspiration, and I wanted to make a top one as well as the bottom one as well. And here, this is how you make one of the barbs. Again, Sully goes into this in a lot more detail, but it's just a matter of wrapping around as tight as possible a length of wire, and then squashing it up and snipping off at each end to create a very effective looking barb. So well done, Sully. That was a great video, my friend. So there we go. Added a little bit of super glue to keep it all in place, but very pleased with how that's turned out, and it's certainly looking the part. Next, what we want to do is to create some little brackets. So what I did is just use a drill, obviously a 3mm drill because it's 3mm wire. Put 2 holes above and beyond, at the top and at the bottom, and then just get an off cut of the wire with some super glue and put that in and leave it to dry. And then once it's dry, just fold it over into the other hole. And as you can see, that's a bit of an extra detail. This bottom one, I've just put at an angle again, just to add a bit of interest and to make it look more realistic. But yeah, very pleased how that turned out. Next, we're going to make the roots for the ivy, and in this particular case, I've used 2mm copper wire, and just try and be as natural as possible and sort of wrap it around the fence post. I decided just to go up the one side because I wanted to leave as much of the rest of the post for the viewer to see. I didn't want it completely covered in ivy, and that was just super glued on, and the process is very simple. So with the fence post all complete now, all we have to do now is to start the painting process. I chose black primer, One Shot from MIG, very good primer, and this will create some effective shadows. And there we have it, starting to come together now. And what we need to do is to start doing some acrylic work to lay down the base. So deck tan was going to be the main base coat, and then I was going to dry brush on some medium grey, both from Vallejo. Now this is my wet palette that I use, and this one is from AK. Couldn't be without it. Saves a lot of time and obviously stops your paints from drying out as you're using them. So we'll just put a couple of little splodges of each colour onto the wet palette, obviously making sure that the Vallejo paint has been well shaken before use. In this particular instance, I'm going to be using a Humble No. 4 brush. And it's just a matter of laying down the darker colour first. A little bit awkward because obviously I've got a camera in front of me, but hopefully this will give you an idea of the painting process. And don't be worried if some of the black still shows through, that's fine. It's nice to have that little bit of shadow work there. And there we have it. Base coat laid down well. Now obviously I don't want to take all day doing this, so we use the hair dryer to speed up the drying process. Do not get too close with the hair drying. Don't have it on a high heat. Keep it sort of maybe 1 to 1.5 feet away from your body and have it on a low heat. It'll take a couple of minutes to dry, but it's better to do that way rather than melting all the glues and the plastic on the post. Next, get yourself a nice bushy brush and wipe off all of the excess, and then just very gently do some dry brushing. A very effective technique, and what we're trying to do here is highlight the raised edges of the wood grain and leave the darker areas intact. And there we have it. So again, out with the hairdryer. Now what we're going to do is to start building up some colour on the fence post itself, and here I've been using dark brown, and we're going to just do the bottom of the fence post itself. A little bit watered down because I don't want to have a tide mark. So once it's been applied, just dip the brush in the water and then just gently go around the sort of join line where it meets the grey colours, and just blend it in as best as you possibly can. Don't worry if it creates a bit of a wash that goes up into the post itself. That just adds a little bit more character to the post. And there we go, out with a hairdryer again. Next we're going to add some brown colours, so green brown, old wood, and some burnt umber. As you can see, these are all Vallejo colours. And we'll start at the bottom here. With the green brown, because obviously that's probably where any sort of vegetation would be, at the bottom with the grass and that, where it was pulled out of the ground. And as you can see, I'm not actually painting, I'm just using light washes, so I'm just doing a little dappled effect and allowing the colours to run up through the wood grain. Now I'm not getting a hairdryer out here because I want all the three colours to blend in together. Now next I'm going to use the burnt umber and just create some shadow effect around the actual barbed wire itself. And again, making sure that it's quite watery in consistency like a wash. So once the lower one's been done, it's just a matter of repeating the process on the one above, remembering to do the upper and the lower levels as well. And again, we don't want any tide marks, so make sure that you blend it in using the water. And now what we're going to do is apply some of the old wood and give the whole post a general wash. As you can see, that's coming along nicely now. It's a lot easier to create the own wash on the actual palette rather than mixing up a wash and using it that way, because you have more control over the consistency and how it's going on to the actual model itself. Now I went a little bit too heavy here, so it's just a matter of cleaning off your brush and then taking it off again with the dryer brush. So that's with the hairdryer on it, and that's all now complete. So very pleased with how that's turned out. So now we need to start doing some of the detailing work, and we're going to rust up the barbed wire using a base coat of Panzer Ace's dark rust, and then adding on some more Vallejo rust tones. Now this is where it gets a little bit fiddly, so you have to be careful, because what you don't want is the base coat of the barbed wire, the dark rust, to start running down into the post itself. So this isn't a wash, this is more of an ink-like consistency, and you'll have a lot more control, and obviously make sure that the brush is dry rather than wet. And just take your time. If you do have an accident and actually get it onto the wood, if you use another brush that is wet, and just blend it out as quickly as you can, because acrylics don't stay wet for very long, they do dry out quite quickly. And as you can see, we're starting to get some effective shadowing and rust work. So once that was done on both of them, it was just then a matter of just highlights, just gentle highlights around the barbed wire, using the rust and the light rust and also the orange rust, just to give a bit of character to it. And again, once the hairdryer has been done, we've got a very nice rusty bit of barbed wire. Now what I want to do is to actually do the roots for the ivy, and I've gone back to my green brown colour, and very lightly just tapping it onto the root. Again, consistency of ink, try not to get this too wet, because otherwise it will seep everywhere, and again just be very careful. And there we have it, one completed fence post as far as the acrylic work goes. And I'm really pleased with the earth tones and the shading and how that's turned out. If you're happy with that look, then great, you stick with it. However, I like to enhance it with some oils, and that's what we're now going to be looking at. So once this is fully dry, what I do is cover the whole of the post in matte varnish from Winsor Newton using an airbrush, and then once that's dry we can start work on the oils. Now the first thing I do is create a palette of colours, and what I'll do now is just run through all of the colours with you. So first off we have Abteilung's Faded Green, Georgian Viridian Hue, Raw Sienna from Winsor Newton, again Burnt Sienna, and again Raw Umber, which is basically dirt in a tube, Naples Yellow Hue, which I didn't actually use but it was on my palette, Yellow Ochre, which I used a lot of, and then we have Dark Mud from Abteilung and Light Mud from the same. Then we have Van Dyke Brown from Winsor Newton, and first off I'm going to use the Raw Umber to create a dirty wash. So just put a very small amount in the bottom of your mixer, get a pipette, take some of the artist's thinner, and then get a very old brush and just give it a good mix up. And you basically want it the consistency of dirty water. Then get yourself a nice brush and liberally apply it to the fence post. Not only does this create a nice base to work from, but it also blends in all the acrylic colours as well. Get the hairdryer out, get that all dry. Now what I have is a 20-minute video basically showing you how I do all of my oil work. So feel free to sit back and enjoy this, and I'll show you some of the techniques. So there, what I was pointing out was the fact that there was little bits of moss on the top, probably from some of the shavings of when I did it. So we can pick those out using the faded green. And the way that I like to do it is to add on not heavy oil, but with thinner, with a moist brush, and just dab it all on. And then once it's dabbed on and you're happy, then get a blending brush and blend it out as best as you possibly can. This is the blending brush there. Now what you don't want to do is to have a lot of thinner on the model, because it will cause you no end of problems. So it's just very moist. Keep using the tissue paper, keep drying out your brush, keep cleaning your brush. As you can see there, I've got two pots. So when I've used one colour that's quite heavy, rather than make the clear thinner dirty, I'll put it in the dirty thinner first to get the worst of it off, and then I'll clean it off in the cleaner thinner. So what I'm doing now is just adding some colour, and I'm working my way from the top down to the bottom. What I want to be doing is adding some earth tones, some of the yellow ochres, some of the Van Dyke Brown, and really just let the imagination go, obviously based on the research photos that you've used. And there we go, we're starting to get a little bit of colour on the top there. Once you know in your own mind the look that you're after, it's very much just a matter of working your way down the fence post and replicating it. Try to keep the light colours obviously on top, and maybe use the darker colours more as a wash to seep into the wood grain. Now obviously done a lot of hard work with the base colours with the acrylics, so what you don't want to do is to cover the whole thing in dark oil, and you still want the acrylic work to show through. But always remember, once you have put oils, whatever consistency on top of acrylics, it will change the colour of the acrylics. But the great thing is, if you're not happy and you've darkened it too much or lightened it too much, you can just simply get hold of some clear thinner and just take it off. That's the beauty of using oils. So that's the top part of the fence post now complete. It's a nice texture and some colour work coming through there. I'll chop and change brushes from dry to moist ones every so often. Just gives them a chance to just dry out a little bit. Now this is the raw umber, and this is going to enhance the shadow effects that we did with the burnt umber. And again, it's just a matter of putting it on top and underneath the barbed wire. And when you have a look at the finished photos, you can see that this colour is quite prominent, which was the look that I personally was after. And again, we're going back in with the blending brush now, just dragging it down a little bit to blend it in so it looks more realistic. And there we go. As you can see, some nice shadow work. So cleaning the brush off again and wiping off all of the excess on the paper towel, I'm now going into the red sienna, and what I want to do is just highlight the barbed wire to make it give it that more of a rusty look. And I'm really just tapping it on. No need to brush it in, and very small amounts. Now, because it's not too wet, it won't seep in onto the post, and that's the key to this technique, is to make sure that you're not using a great deal of thinner, and you just keep everything moist and fairly dry. And we'll just go around and blend all that in now. So those are the basic techniques, and I'll just leave you to carry on watching as I start to move down the rest of the post, and basically using the same techniques and systems as I have done already. As you can see, with the lighter of the two oils, I'm very carefully picking out the highlighted areas, and not going in so much with the wash here, and a little bit heavier with the oil, so to catch that light effect on the edges and the raised areas of the wood grain. But whatever you do, whether it's heavy, whether it's a wash, you should always blend it in afterwards. So despite all of that oil work, you can still see elements of the light grey acrylic work coming through as well, so very effective. Now this time I've made a bit more of a wash. I wanted to try and get into the wood grain effect, and as I said before, it's easier to make your washes on your palette, just adding on the whatever amount of thinner that you need to use, and then that way you have more control and you're able to dictate where the oils will go into. So again, that's the middle section done. As you could see, it was a matter of using different consistencies of oil, from sort of like ink-like consistency all the way down to a wash, and obviously blending in afterwards. And we're getting some nice colour variation now, and it's coming along well. So as with the top, it's a matter of just adding some more shadows around the bottom area of the barbed wire. As you can see there, as I'm blending, I'm cleaning off the brush at the same time. Rather than blend up and mess up all the work that you've done before, it's best to just take off any excess and clean it off on the paper towel. And always remember your blending brush is a dry brush, that there's no moisture on there at all. Again, using the Sienna, we'll just do some highlights on the last part of the barbed wire along the bottom of the fence post now. And the final third of the fence post again will be repeating the process of using the ochres and the browns to do some highlighting and low lighting. But obviously now that we've come further down to the bottom of the post, what we'll also be doing is to add in some greenery. For example, obviously when you have a fence post, there's grasses that grow up from along the bottom, and obviously the ivy itself. So as you can see on the board, I have two types of green colour, and they will mix in well together once blended. Now the green I'm using now is the one from Absalom. The other one, the Viridian Hue, is from Georgia. Now there's no issue with mixing up oils from different brands. It's fine. All I will say to you is don't get the cheapy Harry artist oils, sort of 10 for a pound, that sort of thing, because they really aren't very good at all. It's worth forking out sort of £4 to £5 on a decent tube of oil paint, and quite frankly they last for several years, so it's well worth putting in the initial investment, because oil work, you do need to have decent oils. And there we go. Even while still moist, it's certainly looking very realistic. So really pleased with how that turned out. Now, while I still had some of the green on the blending brush, I just ran the blending brush along the post in different areas, mainly around the where the ivy is going to be going, just to add a little bit of greenery further up the post as well. For the heavier areas around the roots itself, I actually put the oils on neat and then blended it out. The green oil on neat and then blended it out. And there we have it, one completed post. And all it now remains is to do the bottom stake part. And here we're going to put on the Van Dyke brown quite heavily, and then we'll be putting the light mud colour on the edges of the stake part, and then as always getting the blending brush and blending it all in together. And this is the light mud going on now. It was very difficult to do this up close to the camera, but hopefully this particular section of the video has enabled you to see the type of techniques that I use, the different consistency of oil from ink-like all the way down to washes, and how I blend everything out to create the look that I'm after. And there we have it, one finished fence post. And again, get the hairdryer out and we'll get that all dried up and we can make a start on the pigment work. So first off, I added a little bit of gloss varnish to the bottom of the stake. This sort of gives a little bit of a wet look to it. And then using a mixture of light pigments and medium coloured pigments, it was a simple matter of adding those onto the varnish. So using an old brush, we put the gloss varnish on neat. And obviously there's no need to wait for this to dry, because the actual pigments are going to be sticking to the varnish and it'll all dry together. What I would say is don't use the hairdryer on this, because otherwise your pigments are going to go all over the place. So just let this dry naturally. All a little bit fingers and thumbs here, so I do apologise. So we'll start off with the darker pigments. This is actually a mixture of 3 or 4 similar type of coloured pigments, and just gives a nice variety to the particular shade. And you can be as liberal or as light as you want to. And then next I came on with the thinner ones. Now once I had done this process, I wasn't happy with it, so I actually went back and I watered down the gloss varnish, so it was a very thin mixture, and just did a very shallow wash on what I'm already doing here, and then I added further layers of the same pigments again, just to build up the thickness and the variety on the bottom. So it's entirely up to you. You just keep adding pigments until you're happy with it. And there we go, all coming along well, and just adds a bit more variety and interest to the post. Next we'll concentrate on using the paper ivy leaves from MIG. What I decided to do was just to add a little bit of colour using yellow Olivia and pale green. Very much dry brush this, because there is some nice detail on the paper leaves, which is in yellow, and what we don't want to do is to lose that detail. So very lightly went across all of the leaves, and you had to be careful, because being paper they can easily rip and tear. And don't forget, you need to do the reverse as well, because obviously they're not going to be stuck flat down on the post. They will be showing both of their sides. What it also did was added a bit of rigidity to the paper, which was nice as well. So it made it easier when I was sticking them on. And there we go. There's the back sides done as well. Then it's just a matter of cutting them out. I used the reference photos that I had and built up the bottom, and then as it went up the post, there were less and less. I've just left this route on the side so you can just see the process that I used. Get yourself a fine pair of tweezers, and then once you've got them positioned on your finger, you can just pick them up by the leaf, and then it's just a matter of dipping the stalk into, well, in my case I had to use super glue because obviously they're going to be stuck onto the wire. But yeah, once dried out, you couldn't see any of the glue at all, so very pleased with how it turned out. And again, just keep using your reference photos, and then you'll come up with realistic positionings of each of the leaves. And it doesn't take too long. Once done, that is the completed fence post with the ivy. Came out really well, very pleased with all the different tones, and there's a lot of variety and character to that post. So yeah, very pleased indeed. Hope you like it as well. So with the milliput all dried overnight, I was able to give that to a primer, and then what I did was use a base coat of sand yellow and dry brushed on some of the burnt umber, and there we go. That's quite an effective looking piece of post now. And what I wanted to do using the hairspray technique, basically just give it a couple of coats, dry it in between, and then give it another couple of coats, and then once dry, add on insignia white, and then once that is dry, you can just get some water and start taking off the white paint to give that nice chipped look. And that's now got a nice base coat that was going to be covered in varnish again, matte varnish, and then I was able to start work on the oils. However, I thought it was a little bit boring, so I decided to add some nylon thread just to add a little bit of interest to the post itself. That was just attached both ends with super glue, and then that was primed up with brown primer, and then some old wood wash was put onto that. And there we go, that's that one finished, using all the same techniques as the other post. And I hope you think that the rope just adds that little bit of character to it as well. So the two posts side by side, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and there's some techniques that will be of benefit to you in your modelling projects. It just leaves me to say thank you very much indeed for watching today, and to all my subscribers, I really appreciate all your continued support of my work, and happy modelling.